So thank you for joining us tonight. I've been looking forward to this program for weeks. Taos Avalanche Rescue Dogs. Again, I'm Krista Tyson. I work with PEEC. I'm a staff member. I'm our Visitor Services Manager and Volunteer Coordinator. PEEC stands for Pajarito Environmental Education Center, and we're a nonprofit that runs the Los Alamos Nature Center. The Los Alamos Nature Center, as many of you know, is currently closed, but we still have lots of ways you can interact and connect with nature. Check out the PEEC website, peeknature.org, for a list of more live stream presentations like this one. We're able to offer programs at this time because of our wonderful members and donors. And I see a bunch of you on the participant list today. So thank you very much for your support. So hi, everyone. And welcome, Malia. We are so happy to have you with us tonight. Malia Reeves has been a skier and a ski patroller at Taos Ski Valley for 6 years. I'm very jealous. It sounds wonderful. Born and raised in Taos, these mountains are her home. She is honored to be a canine handler for Kona Yuki. Is that how you pronounce it? Mm-hmm. Okay. A 1-year-old yellow British Labrador. Kona is currently in training to certify as an Avalanche rescue dog with Taos Ski Patrol, as well as working with Taos Search and Rescue and large area search and human remains detection. So I'm going to turn my video and audio off and you can start screen sharing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Krista. All right. So I'm here representing the Taos Avalanche Rescue Dogs. Some of you might know what they're all about and might know a lot about them, and some of you might know nothing about them. So this will have something for everyone, I think, in it. Let's see, there we go. My name is Malia Reeves. Thanks for the intro, Krista. I, like Krista said, have been ski patrolling for 6 years. This is my 7th season as a Taos ski patroller. I grew up in Taos. I grew up skiing at Taos Ski Valley and left for a while and then came back and couldn't stay away from these particular mountains and the ski valley itself. And I'm super happy to be back. I also work for an outdoor education nonprofit in the summer called the Field Institute of Taos. And we take our kids sometimes to the Pajarito Environmental Education Center. So when they reached out, I was really excited to work with them because they do amazing stuff down there. If you ever have a chance to visit, highly recommend it. I have been working with the Taos Avalanche Rescue Dogs through Taos Ski Patrol for the last 6.5 years since I first started. I came in knowing nothing. I had my own dog, just a house pet, but otherwise I knew nothing about working dogs. So I quickly became an assistant handler, which is a training process. And this last year, got my own dog, Kona. Her full name is Kona Yuki, which means powder snow in Japanese. And so I am kind of a newbie still. In the world of ski patrolling and the world of canine handlers, being only 6.5 years in and only on my first dog, I'm a rookie still. So if anyone who is listening in on this performance sees or hears anything that they disagree with, I apologize. But I love this world. I'm really excited to be a part of it, and I'm learning as I go. So you'll see some of that in this presentation. So what is an avalanche dog? Well, they are dogs that are trained to find people buried in avalanches. Duh. But before we get into that, what is an avalanche? Kind of a silly question for some people, but you'd be surprised how many people don't really understand what an avalanche is. An avalanche is when a bunch of snow builds up on a mountainside and releases all of the sudden, kind of like a mudslide would. Sometimes it requires a trigger, like a skier or a snowboarder or a snowmobiler. And sometimes it releases naturally with seemingly no trigger, just one extra snowflake, like the straw that broke the camel's back. Avalanches are incredibly powerful. They can knock down trees and buildings, and it seems like snow is such a light, fluffy thing until you get whole mountainside moving. This photograph on the right is of Jones Pass in Colorado. It was a recent avalanche, January 8th. This avalanche is massive. You can see at the top right here, this is the crown, the top of the avalanche. That's where the snow broke and started sliding down. You can see the flanks on either side. And at the very bottom, you would see the debris pile. This avalanche was caused by a snowmobile. It was actually the second snowmobile to travel in the area below where the avalanche is. So this was triggered from below. And the snowmobiler amazingly managed to escape without getting buried, which is a miracle in an avalanche of this size. So this video is a little dramatic, and one of the more dramatic avalanche videos I've seen, and happens to be of a friend of mine from college. So I knew him after this video. So spoiler alert, he survives. But it's one thing to see photos of avalanches, and it's another thing to see a video. So get ready. So this is Randall Stacy as he drops in. This is in Argentina in 2008. You can see the avalanche break around him. Being below it, he had no chance. It catches him up really quickly. You can see how the snow seems to move like water. You can also imagine what it's like to be in the middle of that. Very disorienting and extremely uncomfortable. And this avalanche, it did go into open terrain. I have no idea what their control measures were as far as preventing avalanches, but you can see that was a very dramatic example of an avalanche. And he did survive. He was fully buried in the avalanche. When an avalanche is moving, it's a bit like water. They say you should swim through it as much as you can to try to float to the surface. But when it starts to stop, it's like being in cement. You can't move at all. And so he was fully buried, but he survived, and he was found and dug out. The reason he was found is because he was wearing one of these, an Avalanche Beacon or a transceiver. Beacons have been around for a while. A lot of you might know all about them. They're basically a little electronic device that sends out a signal, and other people who have a beacon can find your beacon if they go to a search mode. They only work if you're wearing them properly and if they're turned on, which surprisingly doesn't happen sometimes. And they save lives for sure. It's definitely the fastest way to find someone in an avalanche. So Randall had a beacon on and he survived because of that. So avalanches are scary and it'd be great if we could avoid them. So what causes them? Well, that is complicated. If it was easy, there'd be fewer accidents. Avalanches happen because of weak layers in the snowpack, primarily, although there's other reasons as well. So you can see on the right in here, this is a snow pit dug by the Taos Avalanche Center on January 8th, so very recently. It might look a little like gibberish if you don't know what you're looking at, and that's to be expected. Snow science is a science. It requires quite a lot of study. It has its own language. There are people who get degrees in this. There are people who dedicate their entire lives to studying avalanches. And still don't really have a great grasp on how to predict them. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not obvious why an avalanche happened. So you can see these different layers that are pointed out in this snow pit. Some of them are easy to see and some of them aren't in the photo. Usually you can feel the difference between them if you can't see them. Within those layers, you're going to find weaker layers. Weaker layers might have to do with the bonding between two layers, or it might have to do with the snow crystals themselves. For example, on the left, you'll see a photo of me holding a bunch of facets. Facets are a type of snow crystal that develops in the snowpack. And they're like sugar snow. It's like the type of snow that you can't make a snowball out of. These facets I'm holding on the left in this photo are really large, but very normal for this area. We here in New Mexico get really massive facet development, has to do with our drier weather and our cold nights. Those facets that like to develop in the snowpack, that's one example of a weak layer, and it lacks the adhesion required to hold the snow in place and can be the cause of an avalanche. But New Mexico is a desert. Does it even snow there? I don't know how many of you have heard that before. I hear it often when I go elsewhere. Yeah, New Mexico surprisingly has mountains and snow. They don't just stop at the Colorado border. The northern New Mexico mountains are particularly inclined towards avalanches. We have steep terrain and we have the sort of weather that creates avalanches. So you can see this photo is a historic photo. All these historic photos in here come from Ray DeVoe, who some of you might know. He was a Taos ski patroller for decades and a wealth of knowledge. So I gathered a few historic photos for examples. So this photo is of West Basin at Taos Ski Valley. And some of you might recognize what you're looking at, but for those of you who don't, right here, I think you can see my arrow. It's kind of in the middle of the photo. Right here is an Avalanche Crown. And here's another one. And here's another one. And those are all mid-path start zones. That was an avalanche that came out of West Basin in, I think it's March of '83, but I can't see the date at the top. This is a more close-up photo of that. It gives you a little bit better sense of scale. These crowns, which look like shadows right here and right here, those are the signs of an avalanche that came out of West Basin there. And those are pretty big crowns. That's a lot of snow that moved right in there. As you can see in this next photo, which is of the ski run called Lower Stauffenberg. So we're Lower Stauffenberg, standing right below the chute called Meatball, for those of you who know what you're looking at. And right here in the middle, that's a snowcat for scale. That's a big piece of machinery pushing snow around. So you can see that this pile of debris with this tree in the middle of it that got pulled out, knocked down, pulled out, and put down onto the groomer below. You can see that that was a lot of snow that moved. That's a huge, huge debris pile, big avalanche pile. So yes, we do have avalanches here. We actually have a lot of avalanches. Here's another historic avalanche, Taos Ski Valley. This was 1994. This is Terror 4. So we're looking up at the bottom of Kachina Peak. So this is the top of Terror 4. And you can see here that pretty much everything in the Kachina Peak area slid during this storm cycle. And the debris actually made it really a ways down Shalako, which is this run here. Big debris pile. And then the debris in front of us looks to me like it came out of the Twin Trees area. Again, huge debris pile. We're looking at historic avalanche cycle. This is about as big as these avalanches go. Here's another picture of the same slide, more debris. You can see the trees that are in the debris. So avalanches are definitely strong enough to pull down big, massive trees. Here's my favorite historic avalanche. This is off of the Highline Ridge. This is Juarez, if you've hiked the Taos Ski Valley Ridge. You can see the powder cloud. So amazingly, Ray captured these photos with a film camera of the avalanche happening, which I think is pretty impressive. So the powder cloud from when the avalanche came down, here's another bit of the powder cloud coming down. This was a super historic avalanche. It happened, Ray recalled that it happened in 1996, and he recalls that it actually happened on Ernie Blake's birthday. For those of you who don't know, Ernie Blake was the founder of Taos Ski Valley and quite the character. And he said that back then they all teased that it was Ernie who had passed at that point, teased that he was working with the supreme snowmaker himself and making a lot of snow for us, including a lot of avalanches. This is a photo of a snowcat, an old snowcat that was caught in this avalanche. It was not, there was nobody in it. It was parked at the time. And this avalanche came down, took this snowcat, smashed it up on the way, and deposited it quite a bit farther down than it was. The debris from this avalanche actually went a very, very long way. So those of you who know the area, we're looking here at chair 7. So this is the debris below. So that debris actually went all the way around a corner and way below where you would imagine an avalanche would stop. And again, you'll see debris full of trees that have been just torn down by the sheer power of this avalanche. So why don't we get huge avalanches like that so much anymore? Well, it has to do with our mitigation program. So as ski patrollers, we go up early in the morning before anyone else is up there, anytime that it snows. And we use a combination of explosives and something called ski cutting to create the avalanches before public is up there. So before anybody else can get caught and killed in an avalanche, we go up and we put a bunch of explosives all over the slopes in areas that we know are likely to cause an avalanche. And hopefully the avalanche happens before anyone gets there. Nowadays, we do a lot more of that work than they used to back in the day. So the snow doesn't have a chance to build up so thick as it used to. This is a photo, one of my favorite this is an old photo, back when ski patrollers wore green and yellow instead of red and carried their med equipment in leather fanny packs. But this is their explosive setup back then, which it looks quite different now. This is at the top of, or not the top, but on Kachina Peak. Sometimes, however, despite our best efforts, avalanches do happen in open terrain. It does happen. It's a bit like the ocean. We are working with Mother Nature. So just like going out in a boat on the ocean and you can do everything right, you can check the weather, you can wear your life jacket, but the ocean might still decide to do something that humans can't control. And that's the same with the mountains. They really have a mind of their own. And we do our best, but sometimes things happen. So this is an avalanche that happened in 1990, not a huge one, but that debris pile that we're looking at there that came out, this is on the Avi Road below, somewhere on Highline. That debris pile is absolutely deep enough to bury someone. It's big enough to bury someone. So whenever we hear about an avalanche that was not witnessed, people didn't see exactly what happened, we treat it like an avalanche emergency. We will call it an avalanche emergency. What that means is that we are assuming that someone is buried in that snow. Now, when you're buried in an avalanche, you have about 10 minutes of survival rate. So after 10 minutes, the survival rate goes way, way down. So 10 minutes is not a lot of time to get someone out of a snowpack. There have been cases of people surviving for an hour. It happens, but it's unusual. 10 minutes is the number we usually use. So when an avalanche emergency is called in, the very first thing that we do is we pull out our beacons, those avalanche transceivers. We wear one every single day, regardless of conditions. We pull it out, send it to search mode, and we're going to look for a beacon first person on scene. So if you have a beacon on, we will likely find you very fast. However, if you don't have a beacon on, your next best bet is the Avalanche Dogs. So you can see Buddy, who was one of our Avalanche Dogs in 1990. He's on the right there. And he was brought to this scene to do a search. These dogs are amazing. They have, all dogs have incredible noses. They can sense so much more than humans can. And they can smell human scent buried within the snowpack. And so a dog brought on scene usually can find someone buried not too deep very quickly. Now, scent percolates through the snowpack at a certain rate depending on how dense the snow is. And this is something that hasn't been studied thoroughly, so I can't give you an exact number, but the numbers that we go by in general is about 10 10 minutes for every 2 feet or so. So if you're buried 2 feet below the snow, it will take about 10 minutes, give or take, for the scent of your body in the snow to come out through the snowpack. So the dogs are excellent tools if you are not buried too deep. If you're buried too deep, then it's going to be a little bit until the dogs can even smell you, but they will eventually. And in this scenario in 1990, this particular avalanche emergency, Buddy was brought to the scene and he did not indicate at all. He didn't have a find, but they don't take that as the final answer. We trust our dogs, but we're also going to do our best otherwise. So what you can see in the background is called a probe line. There's a bunch of people standing in a line probing with these long metal poles, and they're feeling for any bodies that might be in the snowpack. And you kind of do a probe every little, foot or so as you go up. And that's a really good way. It's an okay way to find someone buried in the snow. It takes a very long time. It's not fast, and you can still miss people with the probe line. So it's in order of best case scenario, you have a beacon on, the dog can find you with the probe line. And that's kind of the order of the best case scenario. So in this case, no one was buried. And that's true of most of our avalanche emergencies, is that it's a small slide, unwitnessed, we treat it seriously, but no one was buried. And so we clear the scene and call it good. But sometimes that unfortunately isn't the case. So this is an example of just recently. This is Dutch Draw is the name of this area we're looking at. It's in Utah, just outside of Park City. This happened on January 8th, just like 10 days ago or so. This was a snowboarder who was caught in one of these slides here and was buried and killed. This is a side country area of Park City. It's not open terrain, but it is their boundary goes right here, and there's a backcountry gate. So this avalanche was a fatality, is very much tragedy. The people who were out there had no idea that they pass a lot of signage on the way that says that they're entering avalanche terrain and they need proper equipment. But of course, people don't read signs sometimes. They didn't know that they needed to have a beacon on. No beacons, didn't know what they were doing. Unfortunately, it was a high hazard day, meaning that there was a likelihood for more avalanches to happen. And so rescuers were not able to go down into the debris pile until explosives work had been done. So I think it's this slide on the right was caused by explosives. So that was set to protect the rescuers who would go down. So by the time the rescuers were able to get down into the snowpack below this, they were finding a body rather than a live person, unfortunately. But that is also part of the job sometimes. And this is Julia and Piper from Park City. And congratulations to them for running an excellent problem in a super tragic situation. But Piper was able to find this man's body and very quickly and give his family some closure. So they're really cute. You guys see the dogs running around the mountain. They're adorable in their little vests, but they're more than a cute face. These dogs have a really important job. And we spend a lot of time training them, hoping that we never have to use them. A lot of time hoping that we don't have to use them. So this is Tigger in this photo. Tigger is no longer with us, but she was a beautiful big black lab. Going back in time a little bit, this was one of our first dogs in the program. This is Rocky. Taos Ski Patrol started their Avalanche Dog program in the early 80s. And I've been told that at the time we were one of the only Avalanche Dog programs in the United States. Europe had been doing this for a little while, and there was a few other places in California that may have had programs just getting started, but it's believed that we were the first Avalanche Dog program in the Rocky Mountains, at least the Southern Rockies. So Rocky was a German Shepherd, as you can see, and he was an amazing Avalanche dog, found people in the snow, no problem. However, he was also super into the game and got a little aggressive. So when he found you, he would tug you out by your arm, teeth in your arm, and it wasn't super nice for all of the volunteers who were helping with the drills. So after that, our program was more inclined to get dogs that were a little bit less aggressive about the search. Still very good at it, but a little less aggressive. This means that we got a lot of Labrador retrievers and golden retrievers, which are our primary breeds that we still work with. We have 40 years of Taos Avalanche dogs, and I wish I could show you photos of them all because they were all amazing and they all worked really hard. But here's 3 adorable examples of 3 of our dogs. These are our more recent dogs. Not all of these dogs are still with us, but I'll give a quick intro. There's Oslo is on the left, and he retired this year. Then Dannon, who retired a few years ago. Izzy is right in the middle. She's our super awesome veteran dog now on our team. Hattie is the white lab. She's retired, but you might still see her around as an ambassador sometimes. And Juniper is the white golden retriever. Her handler left our program last year, so sadly we don't have Juniper anymore. And then Tigger is on the right, and she passed away just recently. These are our newest recruits. Sadie is on the bottom of this dog pile. She's a chocolate lab. She's actually been with us, I think, for 3 or 4 years now, so she's not super rookie anymore. But the other 2, Kona is the yellow lab. She's my pup. And then the little black lab is Brooks. And Brooks and Kona are both about 1.5 years, and they are still in training, but very close to being certified. So how do you even start training an Avalanche dog? Well, training a dog in general is a lengthy endeavor, and it depends on the dog. Some dogs are easy, some are difficult, some take to one thing really quick and another thing takes them a long time. And so you kind of got to play it by ear and train every dog a little bit different. But we do have a method for most of our madness. So this video is of me at the breeder in September of 2019. When you are chosen to get a dog to bring into the program, which is a whole process all by itself, then your first step is to decide what kind of dog and where you're going to get that dog. A lot of people ask us whether we bring in any rescue dogs, and the answer is that we haven't historically. It's not out of the question. The only issue is that purebred labs, golden retrievers, they're a little more predictable. So it could be that a rescue dog would be amazing at this work, but it's a little less predictable whether or not they're going to pass all the tests. It's a lot of work to go through just for the dog to not have the right instincts or the right behavior. So choosing the right breeder, I did a lot of research and went with a breeder out of Nebraska who breeds British Labradors, which is a type of Labrador that tends to be a little bit smaller and has an off switch, which means that they're labs that can go crazy and wild, but also can chill out. That's kind of what they're known for. So this is, when you get to the breeder, you're looking for a certain temperament. You don't want a dog that's too timid. You don't want a dog that has no drive. When we say drive, we're talking about the desire to work, basically. So you'll see in this video, I'm doing a little test with baby Kona, and I had a toy. I'm just seeing, this is her first time ever really seeing a toy, seeing what her instinct is. Is she gonna chase the toy? Is she scared of the toy? And you'll see that she passed with flying colors. So you'll see here, I'm squeaking the toy, I'm getting her interest. You got to remember at this age, they don't have very good eyesight, but she went for it and she's tugging like a champ. At 6 weeks old, she's tugging that toy like a little piranha. And that's what we want to see. You'll see in a little bit how important the game of tug is. We also looking for a dog that likes humans. The dog has to want to find humans in the snow. So she's very interested in me, but she's more interested in the toy and the game itself. And then she gets a little tired. So that was the big thing that made me choose her out of all of her brothers and sisters. This was us in September 9th of 2019, our very first day together. I think I look a little sleepy in this photo because if you've ever had a puppy that small, you know that you don't sleep very much for a little while. So this was the start of our journey for the last year and a half or so. As a young pup, they start their training from day one with you. You're looking for basic obedience. You're looking for a bond between the handler and the dog. We don't need our dogs to be perfect in every way, as far as like a therapy dog might need to be. We're looking for drive. We're looking for the desire to find someone. And if they, can't heal perfectly, that's not such an important factor for us, but they do need to be able to come and sit and stay and some of the super basic commands. And that starts very early on. The first couple months are just a lot of exposure and socialization, getting them used to being around weird things, weird places, weird people, weird animals. Because as a working dog, they are going to encounter a lot of strange scenarios that they need to be able to handle. This is our dogs a couple years ago, training to load into a helicopter while it's running, so hot load. We don't do a ton of work with our dogs in helicopters, but up in Colorado, Avalanche dogs respond to avalanches in the backcountry via helicopter all the time. And so that is a skill that's really good for them to have. So the other thing that I worked on a lot with Kona early on, and this depends on the handler, but with her, I think it was very important, was her game of tug. So the idea of the tug of war, which a lot of hunting dog trainers and other types of trainers will tell you not to tug with your dog, but a lot of working dogs, tug is the reward. So you're going to see here how much Kona loves this game. It's her favorite thing in the world, and this is the reason that she finds people in avalanches, this game right here. So you can see, obviously it's not winter. So I'm working on this long before the season. We're working on her dedication to the toy, but also the fact that she will let go of that toy when I tell her to. She has to be able to trust me completely. So their first winter up on the mountain, they're learning the mountain basics. So what does an avalanche dog typical day look like? Well, they have to get up onto the mountain where they'll spend the rest of the day. They do that either via snowmobile. So if you've ever tried to load a dog on a snowmobile who doesn't know what a snowmobile is, they're usually not very happy with the snowmobiles at first. They're smelly and noisy, and a lot of dogs don't like them much. But eventually, they actually tend to love them. It's like going for a car ride. Same with the chairlift. You can see on the left, Leyland taking his dog Izzy up the chairlift. And on the right, you can see Jordan taking Juniper down in a dog sled, which is like the toboggans we take injured patients down. And these are all methods, including this one, that we use to get the dogs around the mountain, which is really important because we have to be able to get the dog to an avalanche if it happens. They also need to learn to just chill out. They spend a lot of their day just hanging out in our shacks, waiting for either a drill or practice or a dog walk or an avalanche. So formal avalanche search training starts, depends on the dog. Some dogs start very early, 8 weeks. Some of them don't start until a year old, depends on the handler, depends on the dog. This was Kona and I at a dog school hosted by CRAD, or Colorado Rapid Avalanche Deployment, in I think it was January of last year. Practicing our tug after finding a person. So that toy is what drives them. They are looking for that person so that they can play with that toy. Some dogs like a rag to play with. Some dogs like a tennis ball with a string on it. But it's the tug game. So it starts out really simple. It starts out with the handler, that would be me for Kona, running, teasing her with the toy, and then running off away from her while someone else holds her. And I run into a big snow cave like the one you're looking at here. And then the person releases her. And of course, she's going to follow me straight into the snow cave because she's like, that's my mom and she has my toy. She gets into the snow cave, and we always start with a big snow cave at first. So it's a really inviting place to go inside. And then we just play tug inside the snow cave, and it's a big party. It's like the best thing they've ever done. From there, the progression moves on, and eventually you have a stranger running away. So someone she doesn't know, but by that time she's like, I followed this person into the hole, and then we get to have a party. And then you start covering the hole. So now they watch the person run, but then there's a small wall of snow covering, and they have to dig a little bit. And then eventually you actually move the hole. So then they go into the old hole thinking, oh, the person's always in here. And then they realize there's nobody in here. And that's the moment that they start using their nose. And that's an instinct for them. And that's part of why we like Labradors and Golden Retrievers, because they have that instinct. They're used for hunting dogs for the same reason. They like to find things and then bring them back, which is kind of what they're doing. They're finding the human and bringing them back to the surface. So using their nose is something that they do instinctively, but they need practice at. They don't always follow the scent perfectly when they're young. They need to practice that over years to really get good at it. This is an example of how a dog searches an area. So you can see at the bottom here, this is where you might start the dog. And then you encourage the dog to Z, is what we call it, Zing across the snowpack. Or around, across the avalanche debris rather. At some point, like in here, they strike the scent, and a lot of times you'll see them very obviously catch the scent. Their head will just turn all of a sudden. And from there, they're following what we call a scent cone in. Now, this is assuming that the wind is descent and blowing in a single direction. Sometimes that's not the case. So if the person is here, and here it says bird hunting article, but it's the same idea with an avalanche victim. So if the avalanche victim's here and the wind is blowing like the blue line suggests, then the dog is going to just hit each side of that scent cone and follow it straight in until the dog does a fine scent search, finding the place that the scent is coming the strongest through the snowpack, and then digging really hard in that one spot. Now that dig is the indication we're looking for. That's when we know that dog is on a person. We trust our dogs. We trust that they're not going to dig after a squirrel. We trust that they're not going to dig after a hamburger that someone dropped. They know their job, and we trust them. Now, if they just scratch a little bit and then leave the spot, that's what we might call interest. That might be that maybe there's someone's glove buried there, or a hat. There's human scent under the snow there, but it might not be a full person. So we might look into that location, but we trust that that's not the full person. And these dogs can smell the difference. It's pretty amazing. This is what a typical snow cave looks like. This is where what we do. We bury each other in the snow. It's not as bad as people think. You're not packed in there like you would be in an avalanche, but some of the holes are really small still. And for people who are claustrophobic, it can be a horrible nightmare. You can see here Travis buried, and he has right here is the dog toy he has ready to give to them as soon as they get into the hole. One thing people ask a lot about is, well, there's a lot of people on the path. So maybe there's, a probe line of people looking for the person. How does the dog tell the difference between the human scent of those people and the human scent that they're looking for? The dogs are really smart. They're looking for human scent that belongs to a person they cannot see, and they can tell the difference. So they might come up to someone else who's on the surface and give you a quick smell and be like, nope, you're not the one. And then they'll disregard your scent and look for another person. It's pretty amazing. What does it look like when you're inside a hole? Well, you're laying there and you might be a little cold. Sometimes I fall asleep because you're laying there for 10 minutes usually. And then suddenly you hear a little pause on the snow above you. Then they start digging, and slowly you see a little hole come through. And you can see here that you're not usually buried so deep that it's dark, although sometimes you are. It depends on how deep our snowpack is and how deep the hole is. You can breathe in these snow caves very well. There's plenty of oxygen coming through, unlike in an avalanche where it would be packed in so densely and maybe even packed around your face. So here comes the dog. This is Hattie coming in a couple years ago. She comes right in, and then she's looking for that toy. She's like, oh, I found you, but where's my toy? And that's when you get to play tug. We like when the dog pulls you out of the hole, which, our little tiny Labradors we have, they don't actually pull you out of the hole, but you can pretend like they do, and they love it. So that's the idea, is like the tug is like pulling the person out of the snow. the dogs themselves cannot be claustrophobic, and some dogs are. So dogs that have a tendency to not want to get all the way into the hole, they don't usually do as well as Avalanche dogs. So you can see here, Dannon, Willie asking Dannon to get all the way into the hole just for practice, get him used to being inside the hole, and Dannon went right in and out, no problem. For these dogs, it's always a game. It's always a game. So even if it's life or death for us, even if we're terrified that someone is dying, for these dogs, it's a game. They love this work. So this was at a dog school this fall, Kona and I went to, and this is her watching another dog get to work and being extremely jealous. So you can see how much she loves this work. Barking like crazy because she's like, my turn, I know where they are, I'm gonna go find them. And there she is smelling. She's like, maybe they're out there, using my nose. So these dogs, they're incredible, and they do it for the game, but more than anything, they do all of this for us. So this is Leyland and Izzy. Leyland's the head of our current dog department at Taos Valley, and his dog Izzy is one of the best Avalanche dogs we've had. She's amazing. And their bond over the last like 6 years that they've been doing this is so strong. Leyland could ask Izzy to do anything and she would do it for him. And that's the real special part about having a working dog. So a lot of questions that we get. What do the dogs do in the summer? Well, they're normal dogs, most of them. Izzy is actually at the ski valley all summer because Leyland works there all summer. But she just hangs out. She chases tennis balls. She takes naps. She goes for swims. So yeah, our dogs are really pets. They're not like kept in kennels, and except when they're working, they're very special members of our family. And they're not always as stoic as they seem. So this photo actually shows Izzy's personality much better than the last photo. She's a little bit nuts sometimes. And that also shows Oslo's personality. So they take a lot of time off. Here's Kona totally wiped out. And Kona and I have been doing also search and rescue training outside of Avalanche training. So she gets extra training even during the summer, and they need time off. They need to nap, they need to sleep. They need to be just normal dogs. One thing I hear a lot from people is, I have a really cool dog. Do you think that he or she could be an Avalanche dog? Come up there and join you and be a part of your program? And the short story is no, probably not. As you've probably guessed now from this point in the presentation, most of our dogs start out very young. We vet our patrollers who get the dogs very much so. You have to patrol for like 4 or 5 years, usually, before you're considered as an applicant to get a dog in the first place. But I do encourage people who are interested in being a canine handler for a search and rescue team to go out and find a canine unit. I know there's the one here in Taos that Kona and I work with. And again, it's a ton of work, and you're going to start your dog young. So maybe your older dog's not going to be a search and rescue dog. But it is really rewarding work. And with your older dog, you can still have a great time by playing hide and seek with them, which is basically what we do. So, you can hide from them, and when they find you, you do whatever they love the most. And it's a great game to play with your dog. If you see the dogs out on the hill, can I say hi? Depends. Does the dog look like they're working? In that case, ignore the dog. It's such a pet peeve of mine that when I'm trying to get Kona to work, or I'm doing obedience work with her, and then someone skis by or yells off the chairlift like, oh, puppy, and then she's distracted and I'm distracted, and it kind of ruins the whole work environment. So if you see a dog and they seem like they're doing work, just ignore them. You can watch them, but ignore them. But if they seem like they're just out on a walk, up the ridge usually is where we're at, or if they're just in the base area and we're just getting down from work or something like that, then ask the ski patroller that they're with. Say, hey, can I say hi to the Avalanche dog? And often the answer is yes, but we do appreciate when you ask. Where can I see the Taos Avalanche dogs in person? Like I said, sometimes you'll run into them out and about. Usually we have our ski patrol shack open to visitors to come meet them within limits. Because of COVID, that's not available right now, but it will be perhaps in the future. We also do dog demos occasionally, and that's something that you can find via like Taos Valley social media. You can also see the dogs sometimes as ambassadors for certain events. So this is Tigger when she was retired out of the program, too old to run through the snow well, but she would still be in the base area and have her vest on, and she was just sort of an ambassador, which is really important because these dogs, they get really sad when they have to retire because the job is everything to them. They love their job, and so it gives them a reason to still put their vest on and still come up to the ski valley, and it's important to them. Sometimes you'll see the dog, one of our retired dogs, with Santa Claus in the base area during Christmas, for example. And actually Santa Claus is also a ski patroller, so in case you didn't know that. So Taos Avalanche Rescue Dogs is primarily an organization that works through Taos Ski Valley. We're a part of Taos Ski Patrol, but we are also a nonprofit. Taos Avalanche Dogs 501c3 nonprofit. We do the Taos Avalanche Center is an amazing forecasting center here in our area. So if you want to learn more, I recommend that you look them up. And if you're going to head into the backcountry for any reason, hiking, snowmobiling, snowshoeing, skiing, look up their reports, especially for the Taos area, and see what you're getting into. We also do Avalanche Education. Here's a Field Institute of Taos group. A couple summers ago, we were learning about Taos. We were learning about Avalanche dogs and about avalanches. We actually got to watch Hattie find a stinky sock buried in the snow up here. This is a Avalanche education program we did last winter with a bunch of kids, teaching them about snow science, super basics, but these kids were awesome and were so into it. We also use some of our donations to attend extra dog schools, and the handlers get to go to have more educational resources. Again, the Ski Valley does pay for a lot of our education, does send a dog team to a school every year, but through the extra funds, we're able to send 2 teams or 3 teams. We also use the money to get extra gear and training aids. Again, that's not covered by the Ski Valley, which a lot of it is. This is Kona when she was a puppy, surrounded by gear. It's a pretty cute photo. But we, for example, used them to buy some kennels for this year because due to COVID, we have some weird shack differences and we needed a place for the dogs to sleep that wasn't middle of our gear. It also helps assist in puppy purchase because these dogs they're not cheap. The puppies themselves are very well bred and they're a little expensive. Every year we sell a calendar. This year we don't have calendars because of COVID. I didn't know whether we would be able to sell them or not, so I did not make them. But other years, come get your Avalanche Dog calendar from one of our shacks. So that's the majority of what I was going to talk about in this program. This is Hattie and Juniper playing tug. So I'm just going to give you a quick couple photos. These 2 are actually half brothers. You can kind of tell. These were a couple of our recent dogs last year before. Here's Kona and I doing a rescue recently, finding someone in the snow. You can see her pulling the tug toy right here while I try to get the snow out of the way so that Emma could actually get out of the hole. Kona and I have been doing really well. We have Kona's found quite a lot of single burials. The one thing we haven't done yet is a double burial. So it's a little tricky because they have to find one person and then reset and find another person right away. We haven't done that yet, but that's next on our training docket. And after that, we'll be certifying officially, which has a little more stringent regulations and also has a time limit. So hopefully we do that in the next few weeks. And I'll leave you with a little video. Some of you may have seen, this is the video of this photograph. So you can see the probe that just came into the snow. And then here comes Kona. There's her little nose coming in, looking for her toy. Oh, there's her toy. Now she's like, it's mine. I'm going to tug you out of there. I'm not letting go of this toy. Meanwhile, I'm trying to take the snow out of the way without crushing Emma underneath it. And then finally, there's enough snow that Emma can desperately hold on while Kona pulls her out of the hole. There she goes. And we're in Hunsaker here, you can see. And there's Kona loving the game. She feels like she's a champion. She just won that toy. She pulled her out. Super success. So a huge thank you to Ray DeVoe, who's pictured here with his dog Liberty, Felice. I can't remember his dog's name. Ray DeVoe, his dog was before my time. He provided all of the historical photos in this presentation and was my mentor for a lot of my first years on Taos Ski Patrol. Thanks to Taos Ski Valley for supporting the Avalanche Dog program so much. Colorado Rapid Avalanche Deployment for their dog schools, and the Taos Avalanche Center for being partners with us and providing incredible education about avalanches in the area. And of course, Taos Ski Patrol and all the dog handlers, old and new, who have taught me everything I've learned and created the program we have now. That's all I got. Thanks so much for listening. I forgot to ask for questions during the presentation, but maybe we can talk about some now.
Yeah, so I did get some questions for you, and keep them coming. If you have any questions, just type them in the chat window below. Could you touch on the certifications and tests needed for the dog to officially enter the program?
Yeah, so to start out on the program, it's they have to first show an aptitude. So if your dog doesn't want to play tug, then they're not going to make it in the program. So that's a really early sign. And then after that, they have to pass a super basic obedience test. If your dog runs away and never comes when you call, again, cut right away from the program pretty much. And then after that, the final certification is, I think it's 1 to 4 people buried that you have to find. And I think it's like a 100 meter by 100 meter area. It's a specified area. And I think you have to do it in under 20 minutes. So that's the final test to be fully certified. And that's an in-house testing that we do here. We would like to start sending our dogs to Colorado to get certified by the Colorado Rapid Avalanche Deployment organization, but we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Thank you. What is a high-risk avalanche day? So what makes the day high risk?
Totally. A high hazard day or a high risk day usually has to do with how much snow we get. So if we get, it depends on what type of snow and what the snow is sitting on top of. But usually if we get more than 5 inches, we are getting a little bit concerned. And if it's 10 inches and wind plays a huge factor, if it blows the snow into one specific area, then we start getting more concerned. But it's hard to predict. It depends on what's under the new snow and what the new snow's like. And sometimes we get 2 feet of snow and there's no avalanches. And sometimes we get 5 inches and there's big avalanches. It's hard to predict.
Got it. At what age does a dog usually retire? And someone else asked, at what age do they usually certify?
Yeah. They usually certify between like 1.5 years and 2 years. But after they certify, then they're still considered a rookie dog until they get a little bit more experience. So it's really like 3 years old is when the dog starts really catching its stride. And then the dogs, unfortunately, it's a pretty hard life on them. They are very physical and they're surrounded by a lot of stress. Like when we get a bad injury called in and we're all stressed, the dogs pick up on that. And I think it kind of shortens their life a little bit, to be honest. But might just be the physical endeavor every day for them. But they usually retire out like 8 years old, 9 years old. Sometimes they last over 10 years, but, and then they often alive for longer than that, but their joints start breaking down. Yeah.
Okay. Do the dogs get cold? And if so, what do you do to keep them warm?
That's a good question. It depends on the dog. So Izzy, who's in this photo that's up right here, she gets really cold. She's a single coat lab, which is sort of silly for an Avi dog. She has a really thin coat. So we actually have, and Kona, my dog gets cold too. So we have little jackets that we put on them. You saw maybe some photos with Kona in her blue jacket to keep them warm. Sometimes I wrap my down jacket in her too, like a big old human down jacket, and she loves that.
How long can someone breathe under packed snow?
It's a good question. It depends. If you have an air pocket, if you have snow packed into your mouth, so anywhere between a few minutes and an hour. I mean, there's been people who have breathed under the snow for over an hour before. Yeah, it just depends on how lucky you are.
Okay. I think that might be all the questions. Just a sec. Could you also talk about your own certifications?
Yeah, like as a patroller.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we are all at Taos Ski Valley, we're all EMTs, emergency medical technicians. We have a few intermediates, which is a higher level, and we also have a few paramedics, which is a quite high level. We also all have Avalanche Education. A lot of us are Avi certified as pro level 1s. And then aside from that, you just have to be able to ski anything in any conditions.
right, I think that's all the questions for now.
Okay. Well, before we end too, I wanted to introduce you to Kona. She's been so quiet. I didn't want to disturb her, but let's see if Kona, who's this? Gonna say hi to everyone? Who's there? Huh? Oh, come here. There we are. Who's that? There she is. Say hi, Kona. So this is Kona.
Hi,
I wish you guys could all meet her in person because she's not very good over the video. Who's that? Oh, she's looking at you. She's like, what's making that noise?
Kona, thank you for the work you do to keep people safe.
What do you have to say to that? What do you have to say?
When Kona gets certified, let us know and we'll send her a little dog treat.
Oh, good. You hear that? I mean, you have to certify.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time and everything you do to keep people safe out on the ski hill. And for those of you watching, please feel free to check our website for more upcoming programs. And also, if you're interested in watching the recording, it will be on our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. So have a great evening and stay safe and enjoy the snow. Thanks again.
Krista.
Bye.